Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 6, episode 33. Bubbles and Bitches. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Linsky. Actually, I think this might be episode 34.
It is.
I-
I messed up on that one because you didn't change you didn't post the Minnesota one yet.
Right. Season 6, episode 34 of Bubbles and Bitches. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Linsky. Jonathan, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, Sam. Just got home from work, ready to talk some K-State.
Yeah, there were some problems with downloading the Minnesota one. Whatever. Jason Kinander is here. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm out in Idaho visiting my girlfriend, so off work for the week. Super nice before football season starts, so just kind of enjoying the peace and quiet before I get real busy, but excited to talk some K-State hoops today, guys.
Can you also give us a quick preview of Manhattan, Kansas area high school football?
Manhattan's going to be good this year. They're going to be really good. J.J. Dunnigan might finish the year as a five-star recruit. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the new quarterback, but definitely one of the best teams, if not the best team in my viewing area. And those guys are going to be hungry. They should have won the state championship last year, fell in the state final against Mays, but I think that they've got or Derby, but I think that they've got a good chance this year. And replacing the starting quarterback won't be easy, but damn near every other position is figured out. And when you have arguably the best player in the state, you just need everything else to somewhat fall in line, and everything will kind of figure itself out. So Manhattan High is going to be good this year.
Okay. There is an impromptu Manhattan high school football preview.
Dude, we love middle of the state football talk in August here. Love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Jonathan, Jonathan, do you have any thoughts?
On mid-Missouri football or mid-Kansas football?
Whatever. Mid-Illinois football would be fine too.
I'm not, too plugged into Illinois football, but mid-Missouri football, we're expecting another tight race in the CMAC. That Rockbridge Flyers game, going to be important as ever, and Butter Oaks will probably run away with Tri County because they always fucking do.
I don't know anything about mid-New York football, so
do they even play high school football in New York?
Not well. If you ever have time, look up Isaiah Wilson Poly Prep highlights. That is my favorite representation.
Like
of
the Isaiah Wilson that got
yes,
drafted out of Georgia.
Yes,
and didn't play a game in the NFL.
Yes. His high school highlights are a great watch. Anyway, let's talk K-State. PJ Haggerty comes in. Nate Johnson comes in. It's a clusterfuck of talent. That's one way to put it with this team.
Yeah,
that kind of feels like what it's been the last few years with K-State. Ever since they had that magical run to the Elite Eight in front of my eyes with Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, where they had a legitimate chance to go to the Final Four, and Dusty May and FAU beat them in a very, very competitive game. The program hasn't been the same. Haven't been back to the NCAA tournament. And this year could this year be that year? We'll have to see. But let's talk about PJ Haggerty. Let's start with Jerome Tang's number one transfer portal pickup. Haggerty is the glue. He is the drink. He is the straw. He is going to be everything for this team. He was an All-American last year. The expectation is that he can be an All-American again.
If he's an All-American again, then that means that they finish in definitely the top half of the Big 12, if not the top 6. I mean, he'd have to have really good counting stats and be on a good team to be an All-American. It's not impossible. I mean, he's going to have the ball in his hands maybe more than any other player in all of Power 4 basketball. But, it's to be seen how he can fit into Jerome Tang's culture. Jerome Tang has his culture. You got to play defense. And have we seen PJ Haggerty play any defense across his college career? Maybe not really. So he's going to have to pick up that side of his game in order for, to kind of earn the ball being in his hands. But when you look at the other options, they're going to need him to score 20 a night just to be competitive in the Big 12 every single night. And so I kind of agree with you that he could be an All-American again, but he's got. I mean, the team has to be good. Like he's not going to be an All-American if they miss the tournament. I mean, even if he averages 22 points per game, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point of this is how many times do you get a guy in the transfer portal that was an All-American the previous year? It doesn't happen very often, especially not at K-State. You could see it happen at Kansas. Dickinson was an All-American. Sure. Like that makes sense. But K-State, that I think this is the first time they've gotten an All-American as a transfer. Obviously they got Kinander Johnson, but he was coming off that massive injury, and he was not an All-American. He was simply preseason SEC Player of the Year. But Haggerty is the caliber of transfer that already has the experience of being not just the best player on a tournament team, but the best player in a conference for a tournament team. And not just any tournament team, a 5 seed. Now, we can debate whether they deserved a 5 seed. They probably didn't. But like Memphis last year did get that 5 seed. They were 29-6, and PJ Haggerty was the best player on that team. He led the country in free throws. That's his game. He drives to the basket. He gets to the line. And it's different from the types of guards that we've seen Jerome Tang have the last couple of years, Jonathan.
Yeah, definitely different, going away from the small, quick point guard to, better sized quick point guard. Haggerty's awesome. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the entire country. And even though, the fact that his offensive game might not always be the most, and I say this in air quotes, ethical, I think he's a great watch just because he's so quick. He can get to the rim against pretty much anyone. He's a very willing passer. Everything that we saw in his freshman year at Tulsa for a team that wasn't very good translated to a Memphis team that they were good. Like we can debate whether they deserved a 5 seed or not. They were good. Haggerty's no doubt going to elevate this roster to a level that they probably didn't reach it last year, except for that little stretch in February where they won 6 in a row or whatever it was. He's a much better use of a lot of money versus what they spent last year.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, last year's portal class ended up falling almost completely flat. Like, you look at who they added, and it's like Max Jones was a hit, Brendan Hausen, and I think that was probably it. Like, Doug McDaniel was a good player. Maybe he didn't do what people expected him to do, but I don't know. I wouldn't consider that to be a hit. Last year, they swung and missed a lot in the portal. This year, it's going to have to be the opposite. Like, they can maybe afford 1 or 2 misses. And I've got a pretty good idea of who those misses could be. I mean, you look at someone like Marcus Johnson, 6'7". He gets listed as a wing. He's not a wing. I mean,
he's not a wing.
He doesn't have the athleticism of a wing, especially.
He doesn't have the athleticism of a big either.
Exactly, and that's why you look at a guy
he has the athleticism of a MAC player. That's what it is.
Exactly, like he's a really fun mid-major player who's kind of unorthodox. But when you put that guy in the Big 12, it's kind of like, there are very few situations where you can play him and it'll work, and so that's one hole on the roster. The other thing is,
I didn't understand that get really.
Me neither. You look at the roster; they don't have a guy over 6'7", 6'8", and
no, they've got Kamari McGriff at 6'9".
Yeah, Kamari McGriff, who is actually probably, I mean, he'll play the 4. Oh well, he'll end up playing the 5 unless they add someone, which we'll get into that. But
no, he's a 5. Likely, you can debate how good he is, but he's a 5.
I mean, but when you look at who they're going to be going up against. You're right. Exactly. He'll be a 5, but it's more of a matter of 6'9". He's not JT Toppin, and other than JT Toppin, how many other 6'9" centers have worked out in the Big 12?
Flory Bidunga.
Yeah, I mean,
does McGriff have athleticism that close?
No, I'm not arguing that McGriff is Flory. I'm just arguing that the position that he plays is a 5. He is
he's going to play the 5 for this team.
He's always been a 5.
He's going to play the 5 by default. He is a 5. He does things well 4 being a 5 in the CAA, but you know, a CAA 5 is
He
a
didn't
lot
even
different than a
start.
Big 12 5.
He didn't even start. He played behind Harlan Obiaya. Like
Obioha.
he came off the bench. He was their sixth man essentially
Yeah,
last year.
that was a really darn good CAA center duo.
Yeah,
but yeah,
but
I'm
still,
with you.
I mean that.
I'm with you.
That
I don't want to come
obviously,
across as like some Kamari McGriff soldier here. It's just that like I feel like you're not giving him enough credit.
I feel like Kamari McGriff right now might be a Band-Aid on a bullet wound at the
That's
5
fair.
position.
That's fair.
Because
I will say that like it's better than what they did last year, which is essentially take like 4 guys in the portal to play the 4 and the 5, and none of them could play either the 4 or the 5.
Yeah, that's true. Like
Literally trying to think of who those guys are right now, and
dude, it was like
it was Coleman Hawkins.
Hugo and Yenso.
It was Coleman Hawkins.
Chor, and Moby Ike Garuka. Moby Ike Garuka ended up being the best of the front court additions, which, I mean, again, that's something that can't happen. He's a fun player. He can hustle on both ends of the court. I don't really know what else he can pass. He is a good passer.
No,
other than that, though, you know, he has a very limited offensive game, at least from a putting the ball in the basket standpoint. And so
he's a fun guy to have back on the team. But
like when you look at the roster, like if this team wants to even make the tournament, they're going to need 3 to 5 guys to have career years.
All right, the guys that I want to talk about right now are the international guys: Andre Kostic,
exactly,
Elias Rapik.
Exactly.
Kostic looks like one of the top international guys in my eyes coming to college basketball this year. Great shooter, great scorer. Can do a little bit with the ball in his hands. Experienced at a high level, obviously not to the same level as some of the other guys, but I think a lot of these European guys, Rapik specifically, has some high level experience. But Kostic, for how young he is, has some high level experience.
And they're going to add another too. They're going to add a big whenever they can.
But I like Kostic. I think Rapik is an interesting guy to kind of come in and be a defensive-oriented 4-man, and I think that's something that they really need with what that backcourt's going to be. So I think that those 2 guys are the ceiling changers for this group.
Yeah, when you look at Kostic, I think a lot of what they're going to do this year probably infringes on him because you know what you're going to get from Haggerty. You know what you're going to get from Nate Johnson. You know what you're going to get from the returners. But Kostic is kind of that question mark. I think the staff probably has a better grasp on how good he truly is than 90% of the college basketball world right now because, like you said, he is probably one of the best international ads, but he's not getting talked about as much as the other guys are. What gives me hope for this year's team is if they can run a 2-man game with he and Haggerty, similar to Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson, where those 2 were clicking and just better than anyone on almost any night, you know, then they have a chance to win against anyone. And then you kind of look at a coach like Jerome Tang, and he's in a good situation because you have these close games, presumably low scoring, where you know it's kind of isolated to down to 2 or 3 guys on either side who are trying to score the basketball. Jerome Tang is equipped to win a game coaching, you know, like that, and so
especially if it goes to overtime.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And so if their 2-man game ends up being good. And you know, you look at Haggerty and Kostic, and they're the 2 best players on the court. Let's say 4 out of every 5 games in the Big 12, then they're going to make the tournament. And it's hard to see them not making the tournament, but it's a big question mark because we haven't, you know, none of us have seen Andre Kostic play college basketball before. We haven't seen an international guy really pop in Jerome Tang's system. You know, David Gasson had been playing domestically for a few years, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I agree with you, Sam. Like the 2 international guys, a lot of what they're going to try and do this year is going to infringe on them. And between Kostic and Rapik, like you need one of those guys to be better than expected, and the other guy has to, at the very least, be playable, at the very, very least. And so you hope that Kostic ends up being that first-round caliber freshman and that Rapik ends up being the defense first 4 who you can plug and play in big situations.
Yeah, And when it comes to Rapik, I just took a look at his roster from last year. The top 4 leading scorers for that team: Matt Thomas from Iowa State, Yanni
Bulls
Wetzel,
legend.
Travion Williams, and David McCormick, who we were just talking about the other day.
Interesting. Wow.
Pretty cool. Rapik played 15 minutes a game for that team, so not nothing. Nate Johnson. I love Nate Johnson as like a. I thought he was going to be a star when, like obviously he was a star last year. I thought he was going to be like again a star for Akron because he said he was going to come back, and then K-State just comes in and drops a lot of money on his table and says, "Here, come play for us." So that's where we're at right now with Nate Johnson. But I think his game is a good translate. Is a good translate. It will translate at a high level, high floor type player. In my opinion, physical, tough, for that size, kind of plays a little above it in my eyes, but also really fast. Like he can play like a small guard and he can play like a big guard at the same time at 6'3", and that's kind of what I like about his game.
Yeah, I think that he's a perfect addition. Probably the highest floor out of any of their additions.
Aside
not
from
counting
Haggerty.
Haggerty. Pardon?
Aside from Haggerty.
Yeah, aside from Haggerty. And so, yeah, like kind of your perfect Jerome Tang player, defense first guard who, yeah, you can fill it up at times, but he's probably more apt to make that big stop in the last second than the big shot in the last second. And that's the type of player that Jerome Tang loves. And so Nate Johnson, 5th year of college basketball, like, yeah, you kind of hope that he'll end up being one of the home run additions. Another guy, though, that, people on the outside aren't talking about a lot, but those of us on the inside are hearing a lot about is Abdi Bashir, the transfer from Monmouth. We haven't heard a lot about his defensive game, but he's long, he's big, he's a one of the taller guards in the conference now, and so we keep hearing that he's looking great on both ends of the court, filling it up,
Really?
hustling hard on defense, and if he is able to defend hard, he's going to play a lot. And so you kind of look at that 3-guard set with Nate Johnson and Haggerty and Bashir, and if all 3 of those guys hold their own defensively, you feel the best about Johnson out of the 3 by far defensively. But if all 3 of those guys are like at the very least playable in the last 5 minutes of the game defensively, like this is a team that's going to have a chance to steal some games on the road and be in every single game at home.
That's really surprising to hear about Bashir on defense.
He's holding his own so far.
Now,
I mean,
I will say, like, maybe you could predict it because, like, hey, he's not going to take as many shots. The load isn't going to be as heavy on him offensively. If you watched him play last year at Monmouth, you could tell just how much of a toll having to put the ball on the floor and try and get to his spot on basically every single possession was. It was 38.5% of possessions that he was taking the shots on in conference play, which is ridiculous. And a lot of those were off the dribble because this is not, and a lot of them were jump shots off the dribble because this is not a strong guy. He's not good at getting to the basket. But he has that nasty step back to his left, which is kind of because he doesn't have anything else to go to, but he's so good at hitting that shot that it got him to Kansas State for a lot of money. So Kansas State probably, I think his best role is as a stand and shoot guy for K-State. But if he can play defense, you can give him the ball a little bit and he can kind of create some space a little bit beyond the 3-point line, kind of just drag your defense out and give more space for your bigs who you're not so sure about.
Exactly. I think of the guys in the backcourt, he might be less of a sure thing just because he's making the biggest jump conference-wise than anyone else, but he's got the size to play in the Big 12. He just needs to hold his own defensively. He needs to play good enough defense to stick in there, but at 6'7", he's going to play. He's going to play, and he's a talented scorer to where, like you said, he could be that stand and shoot guy, but I view him as maybe a little more of a 3-level scorer than that. And so I'm interested to see how it'll almost be like when they had Marquise Noel and Cam Carter. Cam Carter took a lot more catch and shoot jump shots, but, we saw Cam Carter at LSU last year could also be a 3-level scorer. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys mesh. But right now, as long as they're both playing defense, it's a really good problem to have, especially like when you look at Tyreek Smith's waiver is not going to get approved. Like, they're going to need really good defense out of their big guards. And that starts with Bashir because he's the biggest of the guards. And so, when you look at the roster and Tyreek Smith's probably not going to end up getting eligible, Bashir's probably going to have to pick up that slack out of anyone because we all know Marcus Johnson, he's just not going to cut it defensively. My confidence for him is on the absolute floor.
All right. Anyone else got anything to add before we go?
Don't think so. I think the one, like we talked about them, but the ceiling with this team, the international kids in Bashir, how much those guys can make an impact on the game is probably how good this team ends up being. Because we know Haggerty's awesome. We know what Nate Johnson does. McGriff, we know, is going to be outmatched some nights, but he's physical enough that he'll compete. Those two and Bashir are the unknowns to me.
And one more thing before we go, I think that it's worth mentioning David Castillo should have a pretty big role on this year's team. I mean, if he wasn't going to, he would have left. And so David Castillo, one of their highest rated recruits in school history, didn't have a good freshman year at all last year. He would probably be the first guy to tell you that. But he's going to play a lot. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And if he can fill it up, he's a guy who has maturity beyond his years and can guard a little taller than his position. That could end up being an X factor for them. Not that they necessarily need one at the guard position, but he's somebody who's going to play a lot. And so if they see a lot of growth from him, it could significantly raise the ceiling of this year's K-State team.
Also, he's probably not going to play, but Xavier Wilson, the kid that they brought in from Tolton Catholic in Columbia, I'll tell you right now, Sam, I think I've probably told you this. He's better, in my opinion, than Aaron Rowe, who was the other guard that he played with that went to Mizzou. That's
what I've heard. I have heard really good things about Zay Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up redshirting just because, they don't have enough guys right now to redshirt more than one guy. Osei is going to redshirt. But Zay Wilson has been described to me as raw, won't be ready his first year, but by the time he graduates, granted, he doesn't leave K-State, he's going to be a difference maker in the Big 12 and a trustworthy starter as an upperclassman. So I'm interested to hear about his progression if he doesn't play and see his progression if he does.
Yeah, he's definitely a break glass in case of emergency guy as a freshman, but
sure.
I like his long-term outlook. He's really smart. I think, he knows how to play off other guards. He can play in pick and roll situations. I think Mizzou took the wrong guard from that team.
Interesting.
And as someone who obviously wants Mizzou to do well, I really hope I'm wrong.
All right, Jonathan, you want to take us home?
Yeah, if you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he is working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about Abdi Bashir and his left-sided step back, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This has been Season 6, Episode 34 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers, our tip-off talk episode with Jason Kinander doing K-State. Jason will be back to talk Texas at some point in the next few weeks, talk about his alma mater. For now, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.